Hello, my name is Madeline and welcome back to my booktube channel, Cozy Cottage Chapters, and welcome to what is a bit of a different video than normal. Usually I talk about lots of books in wrap-ups, books relating to a certain theme, book hauls, things like that, but today I want to share just one book and tell you the 10 things that I love about this book. I recently finished Dombey Son by Charles Dickens, and I absolutely adored it. This was an easy 5-star read for me. I fell in love with this story, and so I wanted to make a separate video where I can just gush about this book because I have so much to say. I'm not going to be giving you like a summary or analysis of this book. There are lots of places that you can go to find that kind of information, but I thought it would be a bit more casual and personal and fun to just tell you about the 10 things that I really loved about this book. These things are in no particular order, it's just kind of how it came to mind. So number one, this is a story that follows a family. And I absolutely love when we get to see a family kind of over a period of years. In this story, it's about 20, maybe 30 years that we're following Mr. Dombey. And at the start of the book, he has a daughter named Florence, and his son has just been born. And this is really important to Mr. Dombey because his business is Dombey and Son, so he needs a son. And we just see over the course of this book the relationships that he has with his children, and Florence is just treated so badly by her father because she's a girl, and she's basically useless to him. Because all Paul Dombey, the father, really cares about is business and how things relate to his company. It's such an interesting look at the family, and I just really enjoyed that was kind of the center point of this book. Number two, as is the case, I think, with a lot of Dickens, this has an amazing cast of characters, especially side characters. There are some really memorable side characters that I loved. For instance, there is Captain Cuttle, this kind of rough exterior captain who has a hook for one hand, but deep down he's just the kindest, sweetest, most loving person. I really loved his character. He was so funny. The way he talks, the way he interacts with people is just so unique to him, and it just makes him such a fun character to read about. Honestly, I would love for there to be a book featuring Captain Cuttle because I loved him so much. There's also Mr. Toots, who is a classmate of Mr. Dombey's son, who he names after himself, Paul. And Mr. Toots becomes infatuated with Florence and just absolutely adores her. And there's a nice friendship that forms there. He's another character who has just a very particular way of being, of talking and acting, and it was so fun to read about. I really enjoyed that. Also Susan, who is, I guess, is she the nanny? She helps take care of Florence, and not only in kind of this professional capacity, but we also see her just developing this really amazing friendship and relationship with Florence, and she stands up for her in some amazing ways. I loved Susan's character as well. Number three, I really enjoyed all of the seafaring, shipping elements of this story. The cover of my book kind of has these waves, and the sea plays a huge part in the story. There's a character that goes off on a shipping expedition. I don't know the word exactly, but he goes off to sea for a period of time. That is an important part of the book. We have Captain Cuttle, obviously, who references, his time on the sea a lot. And yeah, there's lots of shipping, seafaring elements in the story, which made it a bit special and a bit unique. I would have loved it without those elements, but those elements just gave something extra to the story. Next up are the friendships that form in this story. I definitely have some beautiful portrayals of friendship. Like I said with Mr. Toots, he's such a loyal friend to Florence. And yes, he loves her, and would want probably to be more than a friend with her, but he is just so content to do what he can in whatever capacity that is, and we see him just being such a good friend to Florence and really being there for her. Also, like I mentioned with Susan a little bit too, she's also an amazing friend to Florence, and Florence is just treated so badly by her father throughout the book, and at one point, I don't think this is spoilery, but if it is, if you really don't want to know, you can skip ahead a bit. But at one point, Susan approaches Mr. Dombey and stands up for Florence in a really amazing way that is just so powerful, because Susan is employed by Mr. Dombey, and here she is going to him and telling him, you are being absolutely terrible to this amazing girl, and this is not right. So I loved Susan so much for this. There are so many different dynamics of friendship at play in this book. Just, it's so much fun to read about. Number 5, writing in this book is absolutely beautiful. There are so many phrases that I just had to slow down and reread because I was just like, wow, this is absolutely gorgeous. The story kept me captivated, but also the writing. It was just a lot of fun to be in this world. Number 6. Now, this book is chunky. My copy is over 1,000 pages, but this was a fast-paced story. There was no part of it where I was bored and I thought this could just be cut out. Every single chapter moved the story forward in an important way, and I was never bored. Usually in really big books like this, there's a point in the middle where I get a little tired of the story and I'm not that interested, but that was not the case with Dombey Son. I was invested in the story from the very first page to the very last page. And honestly, when I finished this book, I was like, I could read another 1,000 pages. I enjoyed it that much. Number 7. This, I'll try not to be too spoilery in this, but at the end, there are no loose ends in this story. Everything is tied up so nicely, and there were things that happened at the end that I wasn't even expecting, that I wasn't even hoping or rooting for, but that felt so right. Dickens took care of every single character in this book and gave every single character a nice, neat ending, which was so nice and not something I was honestly expecting. And once I got to the end and I saw all of the ways that elements from the beginning of the story got wrapped up at the end of it, I was just so relieved and so happy. It's just so nice and so wonderful and just absolutely perfect. Number 8. I also really enjoyed the romance storyline that we have. Yes, we're following this family and we're following Paul Dombey, but we're also mostly following Florence, his daughter, and there's a bit of a romance that develops, and I really, really enjoyed this. I was rooting for Florence so hard. I wanted her to have the best possible ending, and it worked out better than I could have hoped for her. Number 9. Again, I don't want to say too much about this because I don't want to give anything away, but I really appreciated the evolution of Mr. Dombey as a character as well in this book. He, in the very beginning, and for like a lot of the book, is just absolutely terrible. He treats Florence so badly. He ignores her, he neglects her, he only cares about his business, he only cares about Dombey and Son and being successful and how people in society view him. And he's a very unlikable character. Like, there's not a lot of redeeming qualities that Mr. Dombey has, but at the end we do get a little bit of an improvement, is all I'll say. Not be perfectly resolved, but we see hope, and I think that's important, because if Dombey just stayed terrible from beginning to end, I would have been really upset. But because we see a little bit of an improvement, it gives me hope, and I really liked that. Lastly, the humor in this book was so good. I was laughing out loud in multiple spots, and that's really hard for me to do. I don't laugh very often when reading or cry, so when a book can make me laugh out loud, that's very high praise. It was so good. It was so funny, and I really enjoyed that about this book. Dickens's humor is very subtle, but I really appreciate that about his writing, and I know I'm always gonna have a good time when I'm in his world. Alright, that is it for 10 things I loved about Dombey Son. I seriously would recommend this book so much. I had the best time reading it. I took my time. I read it over the course of 3 months, and it was just such a treat. Every day when I would pick this book up to read just a little bit, I was so delighted and often would want to read much more than the little bit I was reading. But yeah, anyways, if you have not read this yet, I would highly recommend it. And if you did read it, I would love to hear what you thought about it. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!